And with that, I think we'll move to our opening hymn, which is 346, and we'll be up here. Let me also welcome, I didn't do this, our online community, which is probably pretty large this morning, and probably made the right decision, frankly. But it's not too bad here, is it? So, Joy? Please remain standing and join me in reciting our covenant. Enriched by our differences and joined together in our search for meaning, we covenant with ourselves and each other to seek truth in a spirit of love, to strive for justice, and to serve others with a joyful heart. Kristen?
You may be seated. Good morning. Our chalice lighting words today are the words of James Villa Blake. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. You may remain seated for our centering song.
Each week we gather in community. We may be feeling full of joy or feeling full of sorrow, or both. We may honor whatever it is we're feeling, wherever we are, by dropping stones of joy or sorrow in our bowl. If you're joining us online, you can share by chat. All are welcome to come forward. And I'll drop two more stones, one for those who are online and another for all of those joys and sorrows that are in our hearts but go unspoken this morning. And now I ask you to rise as you are willing and able to do our Spirit of Life movements this morning. All right? You can see them on the screen. Skip, that's the wrong one. Here we go.
You may be seated. So this is the part of our summer services where we normally have a reading, but because I'm here, I'm going to tell a story, because that's what I do. So this story is based on a picture book by Aiko Kadono, and this is a lovely picture book, but I've changed the story a little bit to make it suitable for telling. After Grandma died, Grandpa was all alone. He felt too sad to do anything. His days were spent sitting in his living room, not really wanting to do much of anything. Until one day, when Grandpa decided he wanted something warm to eat. In fact, what he specifically wanted was this special vegetable soup that Grandma used to make. He kind of remembered the recipe, not entirely, but he figured he could figure it out. So he went into the kitchen. Now in Grandpa's kitchen, he had pots lined up on the wall, smallest to largest. He took the smallest pot, just enough soup for himself, and he put it on the stove, and he remembered Grandma's soup had beans in it and carrots. That was all he remembered. So he put those in the pot with some water, salt, and pepper. When the soup was done, he heard little footsteps at his door. And he opened the door, and there were 3 little mice there. They had smelled the soup. Grandpa, I don't know if this would be my reaction, but Grandpa invited the mice in and gave them little saucers of soup. The mice ate up the soup and thanked Grandpa. They said it was delicious. After the mice had left, Grandpa looked in his pot. There was just a little bit of soup left. He poured it into a bowl and ate some. But it wasn't quite right. It wasn't the way he remembered. But he was going to try again. The next day, Grandpa took the next bigger pot, not the smallest one, but the slightly less small pot, just in case his mice friends came back. And he remembered carrots. Oh no, he put carrots in. Beans, carrots. He remembered tomatoes. There were tomatoes in this soup. That makes sense, right, in a vegetable soup. So today, he put in beans, carrots, tomatoes, salt, and pepper, put it on the stove. When it was done, he heard footsteps at his door. He wasn't surprised. He opened it up. There were the 3 mice and a cat. Now, this is kind of strange, but I guess the cat was friends with the mice. The cat came in too. And Grandpa filled 3 little saucers for the mice, a small dish for the cat, after the animals had eaten, and said thank you. Grandpa saw that there was just a little bit of soup left in the pot. He tried it, and once again, it was not quite right, but he would try. The next day, he picked the medium-sized pot, put in the carrots, tomatoes, beans, salt, pepper, and onions. Grandpa's soup definitely had onions. He put in some onions. And when the soup was done, he heard footsteps at his door, tiny footsteps and some slightly bigger footsteps. Today, 3 mice, the cat, and a dog had come for soup. Grandpa invited them all in, gave the mice little saucers of soup, the cat a small dish, the dog a medium dish. And by the end, there was just a little soup left in the pot for Grandpa. Once again, he tried it. Still not quite right. But he would try again. The next day, Grandpa had learned his lesson by this point, so he took the biggest pot he had, because surely someone, were they going to bring a goat? Who knew? Someone was going to come extra for this soup, so he got the biggest pot he had. He put in carrots and beans and tomatoes and onion and potatoes. There were definitely potatoes in Grandma's soup. Salt, pepper. When the soup was done, there were footsteps at Grandpa's door. Little footsteps, bigger footsteps, some even bigger footsteps. Grandpa opened the door, 3 mice, the cat, the dog, and a little boy. "Hello," said the boy. "Hello," said Grandpa. "Did you smell the soup?" The boy said, "Yes, I did smell the soup. It smells delicious." Grandpa said, "I am happy to share. I made plenty of soup today." The little boy turned around and said, "Hey, guys, Grandpa said he's happy to share. He made plenty of soup." 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 children came running into Grandpa's house, along with the boy, the dog, the cat, and the 3 mice. Grandpa used up all of his saucers and bowls and cups to dish out soup for all of his new friends. They all sat down at the table and started to eat, but the little boy said, "Grandpa, aren't you going to come join us?" "Yes, Grandpa, come join us," the children said, and they made room for him at the table. Grandpa took a scoop from the pot, the last scoop, there was only a little left. He put it in a bowl and he sat down and looked around at the children and the cat and the dog and the mice. And he took a sip of soup and it was perfect, just like he remembered. The next day, tomorrow, thought Grandpa, I will use all my pots to make soup. Thank you for listening to my story today.
Our church survives and thrives through the generous contributions from our members and our friends. Now's the time and opportunity for you to do so. You can text your contribution to the phone number there on your screen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joy. I want to mention that I asked Joy to play that song this morning, and so she learned it this week and just is amazingly talented. Thank you very much, Joy. My son, Caleb, has always been interested in wood and metalworking. A few years ago, we enrolled him in a blacksmithing class for a birthday gift. He was 12, I think, so a parent had to enroll in the class with him and attend. That's why I took a blacksmithing class, something I might not have otherwise done. It was at Harriton House in Lower Merion, which is one of those living history kind of places. So this was historical blacksmithing with coal fire and a hand-cranked bellows. It was all day and hot and hard and exhausting. We both came home covered in soot, looking like characters from a Charles Dickens novel. Forging is a process of incremental change. When you heat steel to a high temperature, you can change its shape, but only for a little while. Once the steel starts to cool, further change becomes impossible. So back into the heat it goes. There are fits and starts, constant checking to make sure that the metal has gotten hot enough, but not too hot. It's a process that requires attention and patience and skill. Joy Berry, a fantastic UU religious educator and interim director of the FOS Collaborative at the Meadville Lombard School for Ministry, talks about forged faith. This idea that faith is something we work on over time, that we collaborate on, we build and hone it. This morning, I want to unpack this a little bit. I'm going to reflect a little bit on how my faith has forged me, how it's been forged, and how it continues to be forged. And I'm going to talk about how we all have a role in forging the faith of our children and youth. First, I need to define what I mean by faith. Those can be loaded words for UUs. Faith is sometimes used as shorthand for faith in God or faith in a higher power. And for some of us UUs, our personal faith does include faith in God or a higher power. But for right now, I want to talk about faith as a system of beliefs that guide the way we are in the world and the way we make meaning. Faith is that to which we give our hearts. And for me, right now, that faith is Unitarian Universalism. But it didn't start that way. I remember when faith went from being a small part of my childhood to being a primary focus. Right before kindergarten, my family moved, and my parents started shopping for a new church. I had been baptized in a Presbyterian church, but when we moved, they settled on St. David's, an active and pretty evangelical Episcopal church. Shortly after that, my parents went on revival weekends that were popular at the time. Their experience of Jesus on their revival weekends and throughout their lives since has shaped their faith, has forged their faith. It gives them meaning and purpose. That was the faith of my childhood. I loved my church. I was there all the time. Sundays for worship and Sunday school, Wednesdays for kids club, which was also when my parents had Bible study, Thursdays for children's choir, sometimes other days too if my parents had committee meetings or were volunteering for something. There were special events, of course. Back in the 80s, the men's club had a softball team that competed against the softball teams of other churches, and I remember going to their games. It was a centerpiece of our lives. And what I learned through that experience, what was forged in me through that, was that church was my community. It was my safe place. It was a place where kids could run around and explore and ask questions. It was a place where adults volunteered, where they learned and discussed and pursued their own faith development. I mean, the people at St. David's had firm beliefs, but they didn't really think they had all the answers. There was room for learning. And I continued that learning. I chose a Christian college, Eastern College, which is now Eastern University, but it was Eastern College in the 90s. And although I didn't know it at the time, it ended up being the perfect place for me. Eastern was recently called the Evangelical Left's Laboratory, kind of derisively by Christian Century magazine. When I was there, it was a place where Tony Campolo preached a gospel of social justice. In the mid-90s, a group of people who were experiencing homelessness began to live in St. Edward's, an abandoned Catholic church in North Philly. When the city was threatening to kick the people out, my friends bought an air horn and blasted it on campus to alert us to the raids. This was before cell phones, kids. When we heard the air horn, we piled into our cars and we drove to St. Ed's, knowing that the city would be less likely to evict if there was a huge group of suburban college kids there. It was imperfect, but we had found a way to use our privilege to stand with the families who were homeless. That was the forging of my faith in college. But something else was happening during those years. I was figuring out, slowly and painstakingly, that I was a lesbian. My friends and I joke that I was the last one to know, which is probably true. But being gay was really hard for me to integrate with my faith. That took more forging, more heating and shaping. I was in my 30s when I found Unitarian Universalism. My Episcopal faith no longer fit me. I could see cracks forming as I continued to wrestle with ideas about salvation, evil, and God's will. It was time to relight the fire, to head back into the forge. And that was hard. I had gotten used to the shape of the faith I had forged. And more importantly, I had been taught that my faith should assume a particular shape. To reheat and start hammering was risky. What if I made a mistake? I talk to a lot of people who come to Unitarian Universalism from other faith traditions, including people who have experienced religious trauma in the past. The process of forging faith can be especially hard when we are trying to move past something. Sometimes parts have to be cut off or burned off. New pieces need to be welded on. It can be painful and scary. It can also be incredibly joyful and exciting. But this is a different process than what happens with our children and youth who are forging their faith here at UUCBC. How do we support them in this process? And I want to be very clear right now that I am not just talking to parents and grandparents. I am not just talking to our religious education volunteers. I am talking to every single adult in this room and on Zoom. If you are here on Sunday morning and you share a smile with a baby, you are part of some child's faith formation. If you send a note of encouragement to our Yuckies or COA youth after a youth-led worship service, you are part of some child's faith formation. If you speak the words along with our child dedication service, you are part of some child's faith formation. If you are in a leadership position and you make decisions that affect the kids and families here, you are part of some child's faith formation. You are the community. This is the community. And the community is the workshop. The community is the container in which we forge faith. In this workshop, we have the forge that we can heat up. Our ideas about faith and spirituality, it's a safe place where we can light that fire of considering and questioning. In this workshop, we have tools. We have hammers and anvils in the form of worship, religious education classes, book groups, soul matters groups. And in this workshop, we have each other. Some of us have been honing our faith for a very long time, and some of us are just starting out. We all have skills to share. We are teachers and learners together. So we are part of our children's faith formation, our collective children, and we are part of each other's faith formation. Forging our faith is not something that happens only during childhood and youth. It is not a box we checked off when we completed coming of age or were confirmed or became a B'nai Mitzvah. We are still forging, or at least we have the opportunity to. So how can we continue to foster faith formation in our children and each other? And here I'm going to revisit my own faith formation for 3 things that I think help when forging faith. The single biggest way we can do this is by being here, spending time in our community. Our workshop of faith formation benefits all of us. Now, my church in the 80s with meetings 3 times a week and a softball team is kind of a relic of a time gone by. And I'm not suggesting we return to that model. I don't think it's sustainable or even necessary today. But we can be here on Sunday mornings, whether in person or on Zoom. We can be here in Facebook groups. We can be here in RE classes, Soul Matters classes, Camera Club. We can be here by volunteering together or protesting together. We can be here at the local and national level in UU organizations. I mean, if y'all want to start a softball team, we can be here for that too. And picnics and youth events and all the other stuff. Faith formation, if we're serious about it, needs to be a regular part of our lives. Which leads me to my next item. We need to talk about it. UUs can sometimes really struggle when talking about faith. I mean, it's hard for us to articulate what's meant by the word faith, let alone what beliefs guide us personally. Growing up, we talked about faith all the time in my house. Now, in my case, a lot of these conversations used the language of evangelical Christianity, and so were conversations about God's will. Decisions in our family were made with consideration of God's will, or said a different way, decisions were made with consideration of our religious faith and values. What if we made those kind of decisions as UUs? What if we specifically considered our UU faith when making choices about what neighborhood to live in, what job to pursue, what schools to send our kids to? Now, I know many of us do this implicitly, right? Our UU values become our personal ethics, and we use that to guide our decision-making. But what if we were explicit about it? What if we said to our kids or a spouse or a friend, I am choosing to do this because I am UU, and I believe every person has inherent worth and dignity. Or, I attended this protest because as a UU, I am committed to anti-racism. I wonder what that would do for our personal faith formation to name the ways in which our faith guides us. I wonder what it would do for those around us. Finally, we can forge faith through service. Mr. Rogers, my favorite theologian, carried a piece of paper in his wallet that read, "Life is for service." And he lived out that message. Many of us at UUCDC also live out that message, some through professional work or through volunteer opportunities, political activism, or simple acts of kindness. Ruth Hendry did a dance this morning when I walked through the door. We are pretty good at this. And just like with our decision making, we can more explicitly tie our service to our faith. We can more explicitly share with our children, our collective children and youth, more of the why behind our service and social justice work. We can foster more multi-generational service opportunities and connections, deepening the experience for everyone and honing our faith together. After the blacksmithing class, my son Caleb has continued metalworking. A few weeks ago, as a gift to celebrate his completion of the Coming of Age program, my wife and I bought him a small forge of his own for his backyard workshop. It wasn't until I started writing this sermon that I thought about how appropriate it was to give him that gift at that time. Coming of Age is the last formal religious education program that our children do before they become youth in our church. After coming of age, they become responsible for their own faith formation. The high school group is youth-led. They become responsible for their own forging. I hope that Caleb continues to forge his faith throughout his lifetime. I hope that for all of our children and youth and adults. I hope that you'll join me at the Forge. Thank you. Amen. Please rise in body or spirit and join me for our closing hymn, We Would Be One.
Please remain standing. We'll extinguish our chalice. Although we now extinguish our chalice flame, may we hold its warmth in our hearts in all the days ahead. I'd like to thank Chrissy for her wonderful reflection this morning, Joey Thiessen for the gift of music today, our tech team, Skip Seeloss in the back, and our hospitality team that's setting up outside for you, hopefully to join us for a few refreshments before you leave today. And for those who are online, if you stay online at the end of the service, you will be put into a chat room with others to do a little sharing, if you would like. And finally, I'll ask Chrissy to do our benediction.
Please join me in the words of our benediction. For those who come here seeking God, may God go with you. For those who come embracing life, may life return your affection. And for those who come to seek a path, may a way be found and the courage to take it step by step. Blessed be. Amen. Thank you.
That's a new one.
No.